Good morning, Chicago. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. Inspirational Perspective on your radio is all about murdering mediocrity and living the best life possible. So as I ask you every Sunday morning, are you living the best life possible? And this is the place to be to explore that possibility. And that's where I want to start. I want to start with this notion of returning to the United States of America. But before I do that, I have to introduce these wonderful, wonderful family members of mine, transformational tour travelers, who are in the studio with me this morning. And so let's just start with the ladies first, and then Freddie, we'll get to you. But to my immediate right, I'm going to go with the right, because in Ghana, whenever you walk into a group and you introduce yourself or you're meeting people, you always start at the right-hand side of that group and you work your way around. So we're going to do it the same way. So Sierra.
And why did I go on this second trip? The first time was business. I did the mission work. But this time I wanted to actually experience the transformation. I wanted to really understand my ancestry background. I wanted to know where I came from. And I wanted to experience everything that I missed out on that first trip. So I had to go on the second trip.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Here's the question I want you to be thinking about. Like, what was going on for you as we left Accra a week ago? Because we're going to take this backwards, right? We're going to go into the journey and the experience, but coming back home is an experience within itself that I think a lot of people don't always understand, right? And so what was that experience like for you when we come back? But now let's go to Pat.
I went because I was trying to figure out some things. I figured out, I was working on my purpose with Linal as my life coach, and this was one of the things that I put on my goal list, that I wanted to show the world, the beauty of the world, through my photography. And this trip was part of that. It was, it was going back and finding out who I am as a person, digging deeper. The church I attend, we deal with that. We address that. So I knew it was head knowledge, but now it's heart knowledge.
Nice. We'll get to that. Now it's heart knowledge. I want to kind of put an earmark on that so we can come back to it, because there's a difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge and how we function with that. All right. And then Happy. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Happy Lightfoot. I work in accounting in the hospitality industry. I am also a film and television student currently. The reason I took this journey was because identity has always been something that's very important to me. I have been on this journey for my identity for a very long time. I was adopted. And so to really unpack that portion of personal identity has been something that I've been working on for a while. And so Africa was kind of that final piece for me as I go into this final portion of my film and television program. Before I start telling these stories, before I start really getting into that space of telling the stories that are important to me, I thought that the identity piece was important, and Africa was that final piece that I really needed to get. And so, like you said, it's more heart knowledge now and a part of me, which was very important.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And then my brother Freddie.
Yes, sir.
And Freddie, this is also your second time. So we have the two-timers on one side and then the rookies on the other side in some ways. But Freddie, this was your second time. So just share with us who you are in the world and what had you go a second time to Ghana.
Well, first of all, my name is Freddie Jackson. I was raised in Henry Horner Projects, Lake Street in Walcott. Went to Bernie Upper Grade Center, Suter. So, I worked that job for about 37 years, and I decided to retire and do my life dream as a real estate investor. But what influenced me to go to Ghana, I always want to know, first of all, it was one of the biggest field trips that I ever went to. So I got to learn something about myself and my family, So I discovered who was our slave master, was the Portuguese. And it was very important. So you don't know where you come from, how you know where you're going.
Right.
So I'm very grateful that you took the purpose and took a group of us to understand where we come from. And it was an enjoyable trip. And my first time, you think it was a fluke. So then you do it again and say, hey,
right.
This is a natural thing now. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got to say about that right now.
Gotcha. All right. First question I want to ask, because I'm sure it's on listeners' minds, for you all, was this a transformational journey? Like, did it transform you? Whoever, you can speak whomever is moved.
You know what? I'm still being transformed. It's like, you're still who you are, but there's this something else different, and you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's there. And so I'm noticing, I'm more aware of things. I'm not sure, I'm not radical where I'm like militant, but I am different. And as I like when I first got back, I was still on Ghanaian time, and it was 3 a.m, and I'm up, and someone had told me about this movie Sankofa, and so I'm up watching it, and I'm like, that's the slave castle we were in, and I'm all angry and upset, and it flashed me back to, of course, Ghana, and so I'm seeing things that make me want to do something about what I know now, and it's. Like I said, I'm being transformed. Last night I found out where I'm from. I got my results from the DNA.
Oh, what did you find out?
I started Googling everything. I'm from the Balanta people. On my mom's side, the Balanta people from Guinea-Bissau.
Guinea-Bissau. Okay, so you share that with Frankie.
Really?
Frankie's from Guinea-Bissau as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. Just by the way, for those of you listening, Guinea-Bissau is just south of Senegal. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of where, and it's north of Côte d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone. So it's, it's still there in West Africa, but a bit further north than Ghana.
And what I was reading, it's poverty-stricken because of circumstances. So it was just like, oh, I got to go there. I got to go there now. So it was just funny. This is just last night.
Wonderful.
So I'm being transformed. So.
All right. Anybody else? I mean, is this a transformational journey? Just kind of kicking it off.
Yes, it is. My blinders were off. You don't realize how programmed you are being here. And I think I'm struggling the most because I work in education, and I'm seeing how our education system is not preparing our children to actually know who they are and identify with their purpose. So every day I'm going into these different districts and these schools, and I'm like, we're failing them. And how can I help them understand who they are as students now? And I have them as young as kindergarten, as old as seniors in high school. So I am struggling. As you always say, give yourself grace. And probably this week was the most grace I've ever given myself, because I'm trying to process. I'm like understanding, like, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And you come back home and you looking at the news and you're like, we're lost. And I think Bishop Lance Davis gave the best explanation. He said you have to look at it as those around you are in the ICU.
The intensive care unit.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's go there for just a moment. We're going to come back to this whole notion that those around us are in the ICU. But for someone listening right now, they're like, I'm not sick. I'm fine, because when Sierra says those around us are in the ICU, what Bishop Davis, who'll be with us next week, is saying is, until you've been awakened, until you even understand that in many ways we're operating in a sick, ill fashion, then you don't even know. It's like having cancer in your body and you're not even aware. You haven't been diagnosed yet. You don't even know that you're stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. You're just kind of moving around, maybe a little slower than you used to, but you really don't understand it. I'm just getting older. Mm-hmm. And that's what Bishop Davis is saying about many of us. By the way, to be clear, quote unquote black folk are in the ICU, and what this journey to Ghana does is, in some ways, it resuscitates you. It awakens you to really realize what's going on. So I just want to really make sure people got that when you said it.
And that's where the transformation comes in.
Yeah.
Because you can sit here and absorb everything around you, but then when you sit there and process, like you said, hard knowledge, you're like, whoa, now I need to wake up.
Yeah.
I need to move differently.
And wake other people
up. But I think in order to get there, you have to understand your purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think taking your purpose course prior to Ghana made everything come together so that the transformation can be truly a transformation from within. So now we can affect those that are around us. Like, hey, so let's talk about your history. Do you understand where you're coming from? So, yes, this journey was definitely transformational.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then there is who else hasn't gone in terms of it being transformational? By the way, tell the truth. Like, if it wasn't transformational for you, I want you to say it, because I want people to know, like, hey, this is truly that type of experience, or it's not.
Let me say something.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important that you understand where you come from, your family.
Yeah.
See, if you don't identify who you are, you'll know how to act. Mm-hmm. See, when people do a disservice to yourself, they're gonna do the same to you. If you don't love yourself, how you expect anybody else to love you? Mm. See, when you put on that agape love, I'm not talking about romantic love. Mm-hmm. When you love yourself, other people love you too. Mm-hmm. So they won't just treat you like the French or Dutch did.
How about that?
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So when I went to those slave castles, well, I saw what our people went through, what they endured for us to be here today.
Yeah.
You appreciate your life and how to treat each other in your own neighborhood. You see what I'm saying? When people look like you and how they was treated, you respect yourself.
Got it. So, Freddie, would you say then that this trip was transformational for you?
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
I got to understand who I am, my true identity. Freddie, I'm not when the title doesn't mean anything. Who am I?
Right.
As a human being.
Right.
How I respond to things. Was something that's said or discredit me? Mm-hmm. Does that move in a different way? How I respond to it.
Right.
Is very important.
Right. Right. Awesome. Okay. And then there's Happy.
Yes. This journey was very transformational. I like what you said, Pat, because it is a journey. It doesn't just stop because we went to Africa. I think that the exploration of your personal identity really sources your personal power. And so when you come back, well, first of all, when you're there, you really get this expansion of knowledge of cultural identity, right? So this shared experience that we as African Americans all have, no matter what we look like, no matter where we are in America, we got here from this shared experience of transportation, of the migration of slavery, what happens in slavery. So to walk that land and to see these different ways of being, and Africa is a different way of being, right? It's completely different from the United States, right? So everything, we woke up in the morning and it was like fresh coconuts, fresh coconut water off the coconut tree. It's completely different than McDonald's real quick at the drive-thru, So the ways of being there is different, and it really, to understand your cultural identity and how you connect to this completely different land, this completely different country, but that you belong to because of your history. and to see that history played out, to come back is transformational because it sources a different sense of power, where in America it kind of seems like that power, we don't have it in that way because we don't truly understand our identity. That was the main trick of slavery. That was the biggest thing. They took your identity. They stripped where you were from. They stripped you from your family. A lot of African Americans do not know where they come from, do not know their lineage, but cultural identity provides that we all went through this experience in some way or another. We passed through these slave castles. Our ancestors endured these things, and it really, for me, the transformation is expanding my understanding, my capacity of how powerful I am. You know, what I can endure because of what my ancestors endured.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's been very transformational, but it is a journey. Like I don't feel like the transformation is done. I feel like almost like this was the beginning. This was the beginning, the catalyst to the transformation.
Beautiful, beautiful. What did it feel like as we sat in the airport in Accra, knowing that you were headed back to the United States of America, the country that, by the way, is supposed to be the Mecca of the world, the country that, the land of the free, the home of the brave, right, Pat? The place that many of our African and brothers and sisters who are watching this are like, they would jump at the opportunity to be here. What were you feeling when it was time to come back home?
I'll start. I was feeling this sense of duality, right? Because America is home, but then when you go to Africa and you experience Africa, Africa becomes home almost immediately. You really have this connection to the land. And so, but it's different. It's different from what you're used to. It's different from what you've always known. So I was experiencing this sense of duality where, okay, I had been gone away from home for 10 days, from my son for 10 days. I did want to get back home to my comfortable bed and my water that I could drink out of the faucet. I'm not going to lie. Right, like I could just brush my teeth in the sink without a water bottle. But really, I was feeling this sense of reflectiveness, and it kind of goes into the transformation question, right? Because it's like, how do I use what I have learned here and take it back home? And it needs to stay a part of me. So what do I do with this information that I've learned, that I've gained? How do I become a global citizen now?
Yeah.
Because now your mind is expanded. You really understand that I'm a part of two places at one time. And so I exist to both places. Both places are home to me now. But now I feel a responsibility to Africa. So how do I express that in the most responsible way and the most authentic way? So it was that was really what was going through my mind when we were leaving Accra. Like, how do I get back here? First of all, I was like missing it before I was gone. Like, okay, how do I get back, and how do I give back? What do I do, in this space?
Sierra, what about you? Because you were there with your best friend and your mother.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering how that felt, because those are two powerful connections, and they're right there in Ghana with you.
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't want to come back home. Everything in me did not want to come back home. I saw the transformation in my mother. I saw the transformation in my best friend. And I think the conversations were different, because the conversation with me and my best friend was like, okay, so when we get back home, we need to do X, Y, Z. How can we come together and become citizens? Okay, Sierra, let's make a plan. Let's divvy out a plan. But first, give yourself grace to process everything. And I was like, okay. But then from my mother, I saw a different woman. She wasn't my mother no more.
So tell us, who did she become for you?
She became this queen to me, because understanding that she has to be the matriarch of our family right now. She's the oldest, and she has to hold that throne. And I saw a shift in her. I saw her conversation change. And the way in which she process things now is a little bit different. Like, everybody know how you have a relationship with your parents. You be like, ooh, they didn't know the roles reversed. Like, now I got to take care of my parents. Like, woo. I saw a little shift in her where now she's like, okay, I have to do this for me. And because she did it for her without any helping hand, I'm like, all right, Ma, look, now you got it. Come on. What we got to do when we get back home. And it was just a whole different person. So for me, I didn't want to come back home. But like you said, Happy, I have my nephew here. I have my sister here. I wanted to get back to them, but then I'm like, no, I'm bigger than where I am. I know I have to be impactful. I know I have to get back to work, but I didn't want to hit the floor running, because if I hit the floor running, then what I just did and experienced in Ghana was all in vain. There was no transformation. If I came back and just kept going to my north, I probably came back, I had nothing on my schedule. Nothing.
Good for you. Beautiful intention. Beautiful intention.
That was smart.
Yeah, beautiful intention. It's one thing to, academically, kind of intellectualize something. It's another thing to experience it and to feel it, and for it to, in many ways, seep down from your head into your heart. How was that experience for you in Ghana?
What I think of is that, like, everywhere I looked, I saw people, our people, my people, and billboards, at the airport, the guys coming to get our luggage, when we were just walking down the street, just everywhere. It's like, and the jarring part was getting back, not Accra's airport, but New York's airport, when they were all all races, It was like, for the whole, basically 9 days. This
is what we live in, though.
Right.
This is our daily experience.
Exactly. And what is my dynamic is even more interesting. I think I was talking to Bishop, and I was saying, being light-skinned, I felt weird. It was like, do I really belong here? And then, yes, our ancestors were raped by the slave masters, etc. But do I really, will I be looked at because I'm light-skinned? But that wasn't the issue, and they know our history.
Right.
It was our people were taken from that land, our Mother Africa, and so Bishop told me on 2 occasions he saw someone who looked just like me, exactly. So it's like, I am home. It was just profound, and so it is heart knowledge now. It is, the things that Dr. Asa Hilliard and Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. taught us. You read in the book, They Came Before Columbus, all those books I've read. But to be right there on the continent. Right. It just, and coming in, I'm trying to look out the window. I want to see Africa. I want to see the continent. As I'm on the aisle seat on the other side. I'm stretching. So the guy took my phone and videoed it. Nice. And then leaving, I saw Happy looking out the window, and it reminded me, I want to see Africa as I leave. And I'm looking, straining over the stage, trying to see it, and my heart dropped. It soared when I saw it coming, and it dropped when I left.
So let's just pause there for a moment. Imagine the experience of our ancestors.
Ooh, you gonna start me crying again at the river?
No, because I think this is important for us to understand in so many ways the trauma that we've endured as African Americans, and why we are where we are, and why we are who we are. So imagine that, and you had the luxury of a window, right? But imagine the last time that you see your homeland, you're on a longboat in chains, and all you can do is kind of look behind you and catch a glimpse of the green as you're shoved down into the hull of a ship, where as you feel the kind of the bounce of the roll of that ship as it sails away, you may never, ever see your home again.
But you don't know that then.
Right.
You don't know that then. You don't know it.
And so the heartbreak that you go through throughout the course of your life, as you realize,
That's a really good point.
I probably won't. I probably won't make it back. I don't even know how far I am from home. I don't know what this America is. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how to get back home. And so epigenetics, talk about epigenetics, that heartbreak like really settles into your spirit of not getting back home. How we felt, like I really felt like I was leaving home when I left Africa. I really did. I felt like I was leaving somewhere that I belonged. Yeah. And so imagine our ancestors being kidnapped, not knowing where they're going, not knowing why this is happening to them, and then never actually seeing their homes again, never actually being able. And that was the first thing I wrote. When we were landing, I looked out the window, and it occurred to me that our ancestors drifted away, and we flew back. And I thought that was just, you know, what do you do with that? It does make you feel a sense of responsibility. Like, I made it back, and we've all kind of said this since we've been back, like we are the prayers of our ancestors answered. We are the answered prayers of our ancestors to return to that land. So you do feel a sense of responsibility to it.
Yeah. So Freddie, I mean, again, this is your second time. You chose to go again, and you were one of the first to be like, oh, going back, Linal? Here I go. Let's go, brother. I mean, you were one of the first. And when I saw your payment come through, I was like, wow, Freddie, you going back? And when we spoke, you were like, yeah, absolutely. What's that experience like for you? I mean, it's been twice that you've left the continent.
First of all, I appreciate that what you. First of all, I want to say I appreciate that you have the education, the wisdom to bring group of us to understand that culture. And Sarah, I'm going to say what she said. She always make a plan to get back over. She actually said, Freddie, I really want to go back over there. You're a real estate investor. I want to buy me a property and make some kind of transaction. So she's very serious about that. Again, education about your identity is very important.
Yeah.
I always say this.
We're going to spend some time on that.
And understanding my people is very important, who looks like me. And we have to really capitalize on what happened to us. Capitalize on that and don't reinvent that wheel. We're doing the same thing here. You know what I'm saying? What can we do to make ourselves better? A better people, a better race of people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if anybody on the fence are not going over there, make an effort, an image in your mind to get over there and see what it's like. If you've never been nowhere, you don't know what it's like.
And why should they do that, Freddie? Because it's one thing to say it, but why? Like for you, what's your personal experience of having been there that you want someone else to grasp or at least have a glimpse of?
When you see about other leaders like E.E. Du Bois that went over there, the first black African American that graduated from Harvard as PhD, you'll learn something.
Yeah.
You say, well, it's a way that I can achieve some dreams too, my goals too, my purpose.
Yeah.
See, when you understand your purpose in life, you have a guild to strive for something. You get out of your comfort zone. See, we are too comfortable. We don't challenge ourselves.
Right.
See, when you challenge yourself, you won't be in so much trouble. You always have something to go achieve. So when you make go over Africa and see the people that's like you, that know more about you, that those kids know about you than you do.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When they tell you, what day was you born on? They ask you those questions.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? When someone looks like you, know more about you, that sparks an interest in you.
Yeah, no doubt. That's well said, Freddie. Well said. The beauty of Ghana is we have to go revisit our ancestors. We have to experience what our ancestors went through to pay homage to them. But at the same time, it's home. And it's something about being home that has a completely different vibe. And you feel it. And so the same way, in some ways, we kind of relive the horrors, nothing like our ancestors went through, but we experience the horrors they went through in some way. We also get to experience the beauty of Ghana, those smiles on y'all faces. Yeah, the beauty and the wonder of Africa, West Africa. So let's start with I'm gonna go to you, Sierra, because again, this is your second time, and this journey was a bit different, like you said, from your first time. What was that moment where you felt awakened? Because I think a lot of us, you know, we say we woke, right? Stay woke, black folk, you know. And we say all this, but that same person who will tell you that, you be like, well, come to Africa with me. I ain't going to Africa. Africa ain't my home. I ain't from Africa. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's like, but you woke. Or it costs too much money. Right? But we'll spend that same money in other ways on bags and other things that will not transform our lives. What was that awakening for you this time in Ghana?
This time, the awakening was actually the dungeons. I did do the dungeons the first time, but I didn't do all of them. So the dungeons for me, and this time there was a smell that came with it. Yeah. And you walked in there and my spirit man. And I smelled, and I buckled at my knees, and I'm like, my ancestors walked through these doors. I can smell them. I can feel them. Everything within me was awakening at that moment, because I'm like, I look to my left. You still see the holes from where the chains were in the walls. You look beneath you, and you still have the original flooring. Mm-hmm. And to see that you're walking on these floors that your ancestors walked, and even though when he shut the light off, and made us sit there in complete darkness, that was it for me. That was that moment. I was like, and to think they got on this boat, walked through that door of no return, and all they had left was their faith, and to pray that one day that they will come back. And so, like you said, Happy, to know that we are their answers to their prayers, because we walked back for them. Yeah. That was my moment.
That was your moment.
That was my moment.
Nice. What about, let me jump to either Happy or Pat, first timers. Like, what would you all say in terms of, like, what was that awakening moment?
My awakening moment, as you probably realized, was in the river.
Yeah. I was with you.
Before we went
and real quick, let's give some context.
Yes,
we'll talk about
please.
the river in more detail, but the river she's talking about is the Slave River, also named Asimanso, which is the site of the last bath of our ancestors before they were placed in the dungeons. They received this last bath so they can be sold on the auction block at the marketplace.
And they
were greased up and sold, and then and they reached this place after being marched miles. So I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead.
That's okay. So when the guide was telling us how I think it was after they cleaned the women up and then the slaves up, and then they brand them, and then they would rape them, and then they would they didn't want to hear their wailing and their crying, so they would take either a rock or leaves and stuff it in their mouths and tie something around their face, and then all they could the tears were okay. And for me, it said taking their voice, and how I felt my voice has been taken for a lot of my life. Yeah. And so, again, I'm hearing that, and then I get in that river, and he also mentioned how the slaves would float down the river because they didn't want to go into slavery, and they would, die. And so they put the ball and chain on their ankle to wait.
And remember, captives at this point.
Yes.
They're captives.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so just feeling that water flowing over my feet and thinking, people made choices not to go into slavery. It just broke me down. It just, like the slave castles did not do. I was in photography mode in the slave castles, but in the river it was a whole different experience for me.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that, because for all of us, there's that moment where, and having done this trip as many times as I've had, and done it with different travelers, what's spiritual about this trip? Daryl said it. He said the second dungeon hit me hard. And Daryl, if I may, his paternal ancestors from Burkina Faso, so it's very likely his ancestor was at that dungeon. because Burkina Faso is just north of Ghana, where the Cape Coast dungeon, he was like, okay. Then he walks into Elmina, and there's like this visceral reaction. Mm-hmm. And it does awaken you, because you realize, wait a second. In many ways, I know for me, it was a spiritual awakening in Ghana that took place that I just didn't have access to before. I know one of your intentions was what really, really, really kind of, I guess, bothered you since you've been back home is the image of white Jesus at the school for the children that we go support at the Cape Coast School of the Deaf and Blind. That's one of the first things she said to me when I'm like, why are you going back, Freddie? Like, we got to get rid of those pictures, Linal.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that. Why is that important to you?
Image is very important. When you put a man with long hair, blue eyes, and say he's your God, that's a misinterpretation. Mm-hmm. What kind of image is that? That's not my image. So why you want to put that in my face so I can get up in the morning and look at that? That's a false prophet.
Mm-hmm. And it's also psychological warfare.
Yes.
Because what it does is, if my God looks like my oppressor, then I'm more likely to accept the oppression as the will of God, because my God looks like the oppressor.
Absolutely.
And it's another one of the insidious tricks of white supremacy in many ways.
So you intimidated me while I'm young. Mm-hmm. You put it in my subconscious mind.
Right.
So,
as a child.
Yeah.
Right. How many homes had the, Jesus hanging on the cross?
Yeah.
Or the picture in their houses growing up,
Not really understanding the impact on us psychologically. That, I'm not enough. I don't look like that.
Right.
I can never grow my hair like that. My eyes aren't that color. Right? But this is in many ways, the image of my Lord and Savior.
Yeah. And then they used the Bible and interpreted the Bible to support that mindset.
That's right. That's right. So Freddie, I know for you, you were like, we got to get those pictures out. And it was what made me happy is that the new headmaster of the school had already beat us to it.
And I felt a lot better.
Yeah.
I really felt better, because when you try to mess up a child's mind, that really affects me, because kids, when actually brought here, give them a feel, let them make their decisions as they grow up. You don't start inundating them from the beginning. So that's their mindset to do that.
And so I want to hear from, you, Happy, because Freddie, you shared a little bit of your awakening. Like, what was that moment where you were like, wait a second?
So there was a couple. There was a lot that went on in this 10 days that we were gone. Sierra, what you were talking about, those slave dungeons, that was something different, you guys. That was a different experience. And like Daryl said on the stream on Facebook, Elmina did hit me harder than Cape Coast, the Elmina Castle. Cape Coast, one thing about the castles is they're beautiful. My
Absolutely.
God, they are absolutely breathtaking. These structures, these architectural structures, they're so beautiful. But then when as you are listening to the story that the guide is telling you, and you're really understanding what happened here, there's this duality that existed where it's like so contentious. In Elmina, when I walked into the female slave dungeon, that smell was unbearable. I couldn't even stay in there. And then you talked about when...
By the way, this is hundreds of years later.
This is hundreds of years later, but they even showed you where they were standing in excrement up to their ankles in these dungeons. And so you do have that smell of, when you think about a woman whose menstrual cycle is happening, they're peeing, whatever, all of these bodily functions, they're standing in these rooms for days, for months at a time. In Elmina, it was visceral to me. And in Elmina was where he did the exercise where he put you guys, because because I
Happy wouldn't go. I remember asking you. I'm like, "Are you gonna go?" And you're like,
So he put them in the dungeon and closed the door, and that was not something that interested me. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. I did go into the room. I didn't feel the need for somebody to close me in because the way my trauma is set up, no, it wouldn't have worked out. But there was moments of awakening in that. But the biggest moment of awakening for me was the children. When you experience the children in Africa, it's a completely different thing. None of the children are afraid of you like they are here. None of the children are shy. All of the children are extremely happy. So the first time we encountered children was at the School for the Deaf and Blind.
Yeah.
And baby, when I tell you, you would not know that these children were deaf and blind and had any type of disability because of the joy that they had, because of how they were unafraid to come up to you, to speak to you, to talk to you, to engage with you. All of the children there have this sense of joy about them. And I was talking to my 12-year-old when I came back about it, and I was like, the children in America, they seem kind of sad, don't they? And he immediately agreed with me, my 12-year-old. He said they are because of social media, because we are not kind. This is what he said. And I said, wow, that's so interesting. They have so much less in Africa. When we went to that school and we saw how they lived and how they
terms
slept,
of material.
In terms of material goods, the resources that we have in America is completely different. They have far less, but they have that joy that we remember, that I remembered from childhood, but that you forget as you go on through life, because it's just, you got so much going on, and then our kids are just forgetting, they just don't have it the way that we had it because they aren't as connected to nature. Everything in Africa it felt so connected to nature. Like I said, we would wake up and eat those coconuts in the morning off the tree. That's because everything in nature is honored there. It's respected there. And so you feel it in the people. You feel the respect. That was the awakening for me, that there's this other way of being outside of like the technology that we have in America and all of this fast-paced living that we do here. They live much slower, but they're much happier. And it was like this moment where I realized there are other ways of being, and it's natural. It's natural to live that way, and it actually produces joy, and you see it in the children. Like you said, Freddie was talking about it during the break about the white Jesus in the school and how he saw the white Jesus last year, and it was important for him not to see that, because it's important that you don't influence a child's mind in the way that you want it to go. Let the child determine how they want to think and how they want to be, and that's what I really saw. I saw a freedom in the children there that I don't experience in America, and that was an awakening for me to say it's okay for children to be children, and we can, and it exists, that different way of being.
Yeah, well said. Well said. It's like we introduce you all to Accra initially, and just kind of in some ways begin to unsettle you, because we go to the W.E.B. Du Bois Museum. And then we go to the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial, where we begin to learn who Kwame Nkrumah was and why in so many ways the Western world was threatened by him. We also learn about the coup that was financed by our own government, our tax dollars, to destabilize and remove Kwame Nkrumah from governing power. And so I remember the first time I heard that, what came up for me, because I'm like, man, like, it's like what came up for me is it doesn't stop. Like, you steal us from our land, you breed us over hundreds of years, you have us build your country, and 1957, the 1950s, Ghana begins to come into their own, and it's like it doesn't stop. No, you can't come into your own. No, we don't want this type of leadership. We want to control everything across the globe. And I just remember thinking, like, goodness, when will it stop? For you all, what was that experience like? Like, learning about W.E.B. Du Bois, him spending, in many ways, his last years in Ghana, and choosing that. Like, what came up for you? First day one.
For me, day one, the hat that I wear the most is an educator. And the lack of education. That we get a month here to celebrate Black History Month. And who do we talk about? Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman. They were still pivotal people. George Washington Carver. They are very much so pivotal people in our education. However, we make sure we don't teach them about the people that actually make a difference beyond just here in America. If I understood who Dr. Kwame was, I'm like, wait, so you telling me this man is also in a Black Greek letter organization? We are supposed to learn all this history, and I don't know who this man is. I am 33 years old, and this is the first time
It's by design. As a matter of fact, he's the author of like numerous books that you can't even get on Amazon. Right.
Buy them in Africa.
Yeah, you had
to.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah, they're not in print here.
That's a problem for
Can't
me.
even get them on Amazon.
Yes, and I think you made a good point, Happy, when you talked about the School for the Blind. I like their motto, disability does not mean inability. But yet they know so much more than we do because our kids are inundated. So that was an awakening for me, like, okay, now let's stop talking about Dr. Martin Luther King because we know his history. Let's stop talking about Malcolm X. We know his history. Let's talk about the history that means. W. Du Bois, when we were in the museum and the way she expressed and explained to us the information and the knowledge, I am sitting here like I'm doing myself a disservice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't even know this.
Right.
I was hurt. I was bothered. I'm like, there was no textbooks that was going to teach me this. And so for me as an educator, I was like, yeah, we about to start changing some curriculum and instruction around these parts. So
beautiful.
That was for me.
And this is why we have to go.
You have to.
This is why we have to go, right? Because I'm thinking about the impact you have as an educator. And having been now the gift that the children that look like us are going to get about who they are and about their history that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And I think this is why it's a matter of personal identity and going, but then also awakening others around us, which is the reason I do the tour in the first place.
We thank you.
Right. So now I want to jump to the marketplace.
Let me say
yeah, go ahead, Freddie.
Again, that was one of the biggest field trips that I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? When I was going to school, I never had a field. I went to the museums and this and that, but not a field trip on Black history about who those powerful people were.
Yeah.
Like she was saying, we knew Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, but who else was a genius? Had creative minds.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it took me almost 60-some years to go to a field trip that know more about other people than the other brilliant people in the world.
Right. Right.
So I got out of my comfort zone and investigate, research, and find out other individuals.
Yeah.
It's the key to my success. And my family, too. So now I can go back and tell my family, the Jacksons, well, my name that they gave me, something about us.
Right.
This is very important.
Beautiful. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But they also mentioned Malcolm X, and even in that, we don't really hear about Malcolm X. It's like hinted at because Malcolm X went home and he, figured out who he was, and that changed a whole lot of things.
Thank you for bringing that up, Pat, because I don't think we understand that many of our African American leaders that made an impact, like their awakening took place in Ghana as well. I mean, I did a whole show on the awakening of Dr. Martin Luther King in Ghana, because he went to Ghana before he really stepped up in the civil rights movement. And going to Ghana changed things for him, right? It just kind of changed things. He witnessed the independence of Ghana, and he thought, if this country can be independent, why can't we experience similar liberties as well? And that gave him a different level of fire. Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, W.E.B. Du Bois. I mean, Marcus Garvey spent his life trying to get to Africa and take others to Africa. The list goes on in terms of transformational leaders in our community, which is one of the reasons why it hurts my heart when I talk to other folks that look like us and you mention Africa, and they like, why would I want to do that? And it's like, but you're woke. I thought, right? And and the real awakening happens over there, no doubt. Thanks for that.
I think too, what that showed us it's interesting. You said we talk about Martin Luther King and all of these people during Black history. We do talk about them, but we don't talk about the parts that are important, right? We don't talk about the most important parts, because when Martin Luther King did go to Ghana, he did come back after 57 talking about we need to understand what's going on in Africa in order to really understand ourselves. Malcolm X did make that pilgrimage. W.E.B. Du Bois did die there. He died in Africa because he was there to make an impact. And I think that us seeing that relationship between Africa and African Americans and how we really do have a place. I think
we do.
A lot of people don't, African Americans don't really, they're not connected to Africa because they're not connected to their lineage, because a lot of us don't have the gift of really knowing where we come from. But now DNA has made that completely different. You do have access to that information, but in a way that is comprehensive. We don't feel connected to Africa, but seeing how these African Americans, these influential African Americans went to Africa, had a place there, and also how Kwame Nkrumah was educated here in America. There are such connections between Africa and African Americans, and it's not until you go there and you really understand that we have a place there. That is our home, and it is our responsibility. It's a part of our responsibility. So I think that going to the W.E.B. Du Bois Museum, seeing the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial, and really understanding that this was the first president of Ghana, and this happened in my grandma's lifetime.
Right.
This wasn't even like 100 years ago. This was in the 60s.
And not just the first president of Ghana, but the first independent sovereign nation outside of Ethiopia since colonialism in Africa. Right? So that, I mean, just so much history.
It did source, the African Americans that went there, it sourced their personal power. It really did, because it showed them, like you said, Martin Luther King went there and he's like, if this nation can become independent, what are we doing in America as Black people, you know, as African Americans? We can do that too. We deserve independence as well.
Remember, once upon a time, you know, we were colored. Then we were Black. Then we were Afro-American. Then we were African-American. So all these name changes, all these switches, we didn't choose the name. They were given to us. So I'm thinking
Negro,
that maybe
you name it.
So people may not identify with African-American because it's like, where did that come from? Why did you name us that? So it's in going to Africa and connecting with that. Then it merges, it meshes. It's like, oh, but I'm African and I'm American.
This is what you just said, I believe is so important, because names matter. And labels matter because it's all language, and language matters. And the power of life and death is in the tongue. And this is one of the reasons why you all hear me say, quote unquote, Black folk. I'm putting it in quotes, because that's how we refer to ourselves, but that's not how I refer to us. I refer to us as African American, because that's who we are, and that's what we are. We are all from the continent. And until you really begin to understand that, because there are other people who will argue you down and say, I'm Black. I have nothing to do with Africa. And the sad part about it, these are intellectuals. These are learned people. These are educators who don't in any way associate themselves with the continent, but that is where you're from. And the sever that has been created in their identity is so deep that the only way for them to really get it is to get back, is to get to the continent so they can experience who it is that they really truly are and truly step into their power. So thanks for bringing that up. It's so powerful.
Wasn't that the dynamic with Booker T. Washington
and W.E.B. Du Bois? So. There was. Well, there was a lot going on there. That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show.
Well, one of the callers called me all the time, and Pam, she always say this: when you go to those Ivy League colleges, don't let them take the Blackness out of you. Learn your craft, but don't let them take your identity. And change the way.
But you have to know your identity going in.
That's true.
Many of us don't have an identity going into these institutions. Why we become someone else completely, and we don't even realize we're doing the work of our oppressor versus the work that unifies and builds our community. And I think that's the important piece, and this is why purpose and identity is so important, and I push it the way I do.
Well, you have to know your soul. See, when you sell your soul,
There you go.
you have nothing.
Right, right.
When you sell your soul, your spirit, you have nothing. You don't have an identity. See, you must keep your soul and your spirit. Sure, give me what you want, but don't control me with that.
There you go. But here's the thing. I have to know in that the major part of who I am, my identity, lies within my spirit and my soul. And most of us, we're so caught up in what we see, the illusion of sight. Because again, remember, this is all just mechanics working, and there's so many things that we don't see that happen right in front of us because it's all an interpretation. So me looking at you right now is an interpretation. People while watching Facebook and watching the screen, that is a mental interpretation. What matters most is what's happening in the spirit. We are spiritual beings on a spiritual journey, and our spirits are tied to the spirits before us. And this is why going back to Africa is so important, because these are the spirits before us. And you talked about the epigenetics. The epigenetics of their journey have been passed on to us. And for us to realize our full spiritual potential, we have to know who we are, and we have to know what we've navigated, not just in this lifetime, but in the lifetime of our ancestors before us. Let's talk about that real quick, Pat, because all of us have different experiences in making the decision to go to Africa. And if you're willing, I know that you were under a lot of resistance. A lot of resistance to going. Like, you wanted to go in your spirit, but everything that was happening around you naturally, there were so many, like what people often say, signs that you shouldn't go, that, as I say, are signs that you should go, right? How did you contend with that, and where are you now, having taken the journey? If you can share with the listeners a little bit of what you experienced and where you are now.
First of all, I had declared my purpose, with photography, and this trip would confirm that. But I didn't buy my camera. I didn't even think about a camera. I'm talking to Linal, and I'm like, I haven't gotten a camera yet. I'm ready to get a gun, because I've taken, concealed carry. It was like, wait a minute, what is wrong with this picture? So I finally get the camera, and then then I get COVID. I get COVID, so I'm sick. Although I tested negative, I still got sick, and so I'm calling Linal like, I don't know. And he's giving me these remedies.
And by the way, this is all happening. This is like a month before we leave.
The trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm so weak. I still had to be a mom to my grandchildren. So I'm having to go grocery shopping, and I'm climbing the stairs, and I'm sitting on the stairs. My grandson opens the door, and I'm just sitting there because I can't get up. And, so I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this trip. And so I call Linal, and he's like, well, that's resistance, and I'm like, he's like, you're too close in to get a refund. I'm like, oh my God.
We're literally a month out at this
I'm
point.
freaking all the way out. I'm like, well, I can't blow
and
this money.
Pat's kind of like, Linal, I don't know. My family got COVID, I got COVID, this is going on. I'm like, well, as long as you're negative before we leave.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm scared all the way up to the trip. I'm like, oh my goodness. When I went to take the test, I'm like, oh my God. And then my mom, I was worried about her pulling out because, 11 days with 2 little people is a whole different program.
Yeah.
So I was worried about her pulling out. Until I got on the plane.
What was that like for you?
It was really
And by the way, let's talk about the resistance at the airport.
Oh, yeah. I was even scared. They were trying to send me to Brussels. They were like, because Linal and Lanice hadn't made it to the airport yet. And so I check in, and I saw Sierra and her mom and T. And she's so confident. So they check in and, finally check in, and they go on. And so I'm like, I'm waiting for Lanice, and I'm blowing them up. And Daryl comes, and he's sitting there, and he's got his own issues that he's got to deal with to get COVID tested again. So I'm sitting there like, oh my God. So the lady has said, well, you can go through Brussels. And I'm thinking, and then what? Where am I going to end up? And then how am I going to connect with the group? So I was like, I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. So I was scared. And until, like I said, until we got to the gate, I didn't get comfortable. And it wasn't real. It was real, but it wasn't like, you're really going. I was waiting for something to happen. So when I got on that plane and I knew we were getting ready to go, I was like, I was able to breathe again.
So I want to come back to you, but I do want to hit on something. You already know I'm going, Sierra.
I do.
Because we're sitting at the gate.
Yep.
We have to go through New York to get to Accra. And our flight is delayed.
Yep.
And it keeps getting pushed back. It's a 6:30 flight. It's probably about 7 when you and I are talking. And what was the question you asked?
It was actually T asked you that
question.
T
asked me a question. Okay.
T was like, so what happens if we don't make this flight? And I didn't say anything. I looked straight at you. I was like, what is your answer? I'm waiting for him to say, he has a plan B. That's not what Linal said. He said, oh, we're going to make this flight. I was like, okay.
So and here's the reason I wanted to bring this up. I talk about the power of our language.
Yeah.
I talk about the power of declaration. So here we are in Chicago. New York has poor weather. Our flight is coming from New York, and it's late. We have to catch an 11:30 flight to Accra. And it's clear that we're probably going to be landing about 11:30. And you guys know how this goes. 20 minutes before the gates close. On an international flight, 40 minutes before or an hour before the gates close, you're not getting on. And so I see what's happening, and I'm kind of like, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm praying in my spirit, and I'm like, no. Like, you don't get to do this. Like, nah. We're going to be in Accra as planned. We're going to do the 10 days as planned. So I had already been through that when Sierra asked me the question. And I'm saying this for a reason. Somebody needs to hear this. When she asked me the question, what are we going to do? I'm like, we're going to make the flight. We're going to make the flight. Like, actually saying that was powerful.
Yep.
And we made the flight. We made the flight. As a matter of fact, nobody boarded that plane until we got there. Yep.
And that's what you said, saying it, making it intentional. I kept saying, I don't have COVID. I'm good. Even when my mind was going, you might. I'm like, no. So I had to keep reframing and redirecting, because I was like, I'm going on this. Once I understood.
Yes.
I was like, I'm going. And like I said, when I got on that plane, I was like, okay. So I wasn't even worried about getting from New York to Accra. I hadn't covered that.
You just want to get on the plane.
I was just like, once I'm here, I'm good. And and knowing when you and Lanice were on your way, that comforted me, because I'm I got somebody who's guiding this, who's in charge, who I can lean on, because I was like, Brussels. I was like, I went and sat back down, like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Cape Coast. Like, what was your Cape Coast experience, from the dungeons to the evenings around the bonfire at the ocean, and just the beauty of that place? What was your experience like there?
What? One thing I did want to touch on that I did not realize, I think Daryl said it, was when he was flying over the Atlantic, that's where our ancestors died. That's where our ancestors traveled. That's changed the whole shark pattern of the sharks travel. And I didn't know. It didn't. People were watching that tracker on Delta on the plane. Yeah. And I wasn't. Coming back, I was watching it. But it hit me when we got there, and you see this ocean, and it's like, that's
the ocean.
Our ancestors, their bones are probably not there anymore, but there's, they died there, and it just, I was stunned. I won't say I was in shock, but I was in awe for, and he pointed that out. I was like, it went over my head until he made that point. I'm like, and then that just changed something. did
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I had to put my feet in that ocean now.
Beautiful.
I
So
think
Cape Coast.
Cape Coast was actually where the transformation started. If we really sit here and think about the whole entire journey, Cape Coast was like right there in the middle. And I think we had just came from the dungeon, and we were all sitting by the dinner, and I was sitting next to Bishop, and he says, "Do you see how our ancestors are talking to us?" And I just kind of turned around, and the way in which the waves were coming up, he said, "They're talking to us, and they're calm, and they're calming our spirits right now to say, 'Welcome home.'" And when he said that, I'm like, "Bishop, okay, prophet, okay, let me go over here." And I literally just kind of walked away and walked into the water, and I said, "Thank you. Thank you, because you prayed for this moment. My ancestors prayed for us to be here, so thank you. And then more importantly, thank you for the people," because I felt like it was a family reunion at that point. By that time, it was a family reunion. We were all just enjoying each other, getting to know each other, and realizing who we all were. And then seeing that we all can be in one place together, because we're not sitting here with PTSD from, okay, looking behind our back, like, is the police behind us? Like, not one
Real
time.
genuine peace.
Real genuine peace. And I think that's what it was. It was just peace that came with Cape Coast.
Yeah.
I really believe that's what happened for me, was that peace and that joy and that happiness of family, unity, nobody fighting, nobody arguing. I mean, granted, at the end of the day, we're still family, but there was no true, "I don't like you." It was like, okay, what do you need me to help you with? How can I help you? How are you processing this? Let's talk about, like, they were heartfelt conversations that were taking place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
Laughter. I think we laughed.
Some of the deepest laughs.
I'm talking about in the soul.
In your soul laughs.
Folks was crying laughing.
Yes.
That's what Cape Coast was for me. It was like a peace. It was that bridge between, I can have peace in my life that feels like this, that is beyond understanding, because now we are spiritual beings, and we all basically prophesied that we were going to be there, and we were there.
Yeah. How about that?
That's what that was for me.
And I want to hear from the rest of you in terms of your Cape Coast experience, especially you, Happy, because I know that was like your happy place.
Beautiful pictures.
Yeah. And because what we did is we challenged ourselves during the day, right? You know, when we went to the dungeons or we went to Cocoon National Park, we challenged ourselves, we pushed ourselves during the day. And then in many ways, we came together as a family at night, and we healed and we processed.
Yep.
And that's, for me, the part of Cape Coast. Like, every trip is different, but every time Cape Coast is my favorite because of the spiritual nature and quality and the familial surroundings you have in that place. Happy, what was it like? Like, what was your experience like?
So you just said something. You said the spiritual nature and quality of the place. That's what it was for me. So I'm a water sign. Water is my element. So first of all, Cape Coast is beautiful. Oh, my goodness. So this is where the castles are. So, Elmina is where the castles are, Cape Coast. So first of all, we do go see the castles. And then to see the castles, each one is in a different spot. So we're driving through the town of Cape Coast during the day to see these castles. And then after we see Elmina Castle, which was heavy, we are driving through the town to get to the resort. So now this resort is different from the first hotel we stayed at. So we stayed at the Marriott when we landed in Accra. Now we're going to a resort, which is a little bit different because it's not like it's not the feeling of a commercial property. You know, you get a bed and then you got the ocean. Okay, so you want to spend most of your time outside. So for me to be able to commune with the ancestors in that way, the ocean is so vast and the ancestors are there. You feel that presence. Like you said, Bishop told you that the ancestors were talking to you. I felt the ancestors talking to me as soon as I got there. As soon as I could see the ocean before we even got on the property.
Yeah, riding the bus.
When you're riding the bus up and you see
gorgeous.
all the banana boats and the fishermen and you really start to see the ocean, you're like, wow, first of all, this is beautiful. This is that part of Africa Africa that they don't tell you about, that they
nobody
don't show
you.
you, that you don't see. There's all these beautiful flowers, these pink flowers. I don't know what kind of flowers they were. But there's all these beautiful pink flowers, and it's just green, like you said, in the ocean. And then also, like you said, it was like a family reunion, but it wasn't just the 16 of us. It was like the staff on the resort. At the resort becomes your family. There's horseback riding there, and you really get to talk to the people that are there and that live there and that work there, and you do feel like it's your family. We were talking about that hibiscus syrup. In the morning, the chef makes this fresh hibiscus syrup, and we bought some, and I've been eating it every day because, oh my gosh, why have I not been doing that my entire life?
I gotta go back.
But yeah, there is this connection to spirit all throughout Africa, really. But I'm a water sign, and water is my element, so I was able to be in the water, to experience the ocean, and really experience my ancestors. I did a lot of praying, excuse me, while I was there, and I spent a lot of time outside. I wanted to be outside more than I wanted to be in the room. Because you do have that connection to nature while you're there, and it is so beautiful. So Cape Coast was a beautiful experience, you guys. Y'all got to experience Cape Coast.
Yeah.
You got to experience Cape
Pat, Freddie, what was your Cape Coast experience like?
I'm laughing because I was, I did not get to do enough of it because I was photographer mode. I was like, I love sunrises. So it was my business to find out what time the sun rose and be there when it did. And oh my goodness, I would be, it was just me. And, every now and then someone would walk past.
Right.
But I was out there by myself, and I'm just like watching.
Did you feel safe?
Oh, yeah. That was crazy. It was like I didn't have to worry about anything. Even when people walked up, they weren't paying attention. Like the guy was setting up, his wares, and he was like, good morning, and he just went on, and I'm like just like a kid in a candy store, and this glorious sunrise comes up. I even saw fishermen, the boats would stay out there. They leave their boats out there on the ocean, and they swim out to them. So one morning they were out there, and the waves were crazy, and I'm thinking the boat's going to capsize, and then you see the boat again. But they pulled closer to shore, and two guys jumped out of the boat. So I got them. I got it.
Oh, man, I can't wait to see that.
And they were like halfway in motion. And they swam to shore. And then they're pulling this net. They're pulling this rope. And I kept waiting to see what was at the end of the rope. But evidently the net is way out there.
Yeah.
I was in awe. I was just like, to be able to see that, to be able to experience that.
And by the way, real quick, that's the fish we had for dinner that night.
Okay.
Right?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that food! Oh my goodness, the food was outrageous.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was. And I kept saying I got to come back and do my devotion. Of course, then the day started, so I didn't get to do it, which is why I admire Freddie, because Freddie did his devotion. He was like, he had his devotion, his Bible on the bus, whatever it took. I was like, I'm going to be more like Freddie. And so, but I communed just through my photography. I was appreciating. I videoed it too. I'm like, God, this is amazing. Look at this. Look at your creation. Yeah. Thank you for bringing me here to be amongst my ancestors and to see your creation. So and we all come from. We all. White, black, purple, pink.
Everybody
comes from that
Africa. Continent. That's right. But Freddie, what was it like for you when we walked into the Afriquico Resort and walked up to that lake, man, and you just began to take in everything around you? What was that moment like for you?
Exciting, great feelings. I did get a revelation. That I did a meditation, and I saw people walking in green, and I wanted to stay there because I saw lavender and I saw people look like me walking, and I said, "Wow," and it went away. So that tremendous episode was very, very, very enlightening to me.
Beautiful. Anybody else on the Volta region, like just your experience there and?
It was beautiful. It was green. It was nothing that you've ever really seen of Africa from being here. You're like, wait, they're living amongst right off the river and don't want for nothing.
Yeah. Fruit everywhere.
Fruit, access to fresh water. And one thing they did
Fish.
nobody had was their phone in their hand.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Nobody was
Yeah.
like, the art of communication has been lost here because we're always deep embedded in our phones. No one had phones. They were out waving. It was beautiful.
Yeah, fishing, canoeing, yeah.
Right. They were coming past us. Remember on the boats?
Yeah.
When we were on the boat, they were, rowing, and we were like, I remember you commented, they are really strong because
Yes,
they were
they are.
like,
Yeah. Well, I remember because you were on the boat, you and Freddie both were on the boat ride with me, and there was a young boy with either his older brother or his father.
Yes, yes.
And they were rowing, and just the strength of that boy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was keeping pace with, the elder in the back.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, look. And the whole time I'm watching, he only took a rest for 2 strokes. He just stopped 1, 2, and then boom, boom,
Yep.
boom. And it's just like, and what it gets me present to is that's our strength. And here in this system, we don't get a chance to realize
Exactly.
that strength.
And our community, it's because, my grandkids are playing in the suburbs, and they have access to stuff that in the city,
Right.
our children don't.
Right.
When were they going to see a rowboat? You have to go to Lincoln Park.
Right.
And go on the river or whatever that is, what I'm saying. But you don't see that on the south side of Chicago. Horseback riding when we were at the resort. When do our children see maybe the Billiken Parade?
Pat, you just gave me an epiphany, because we are a people of that land, and when you look at how beautiful that land is and what we're surrounded by, it helps me understand the depth of our sickness here.
And deprived.
Because-
We're deprived.
Yeah, because we're in many ways encased in this concrete jungle that doesn't feel natural for us. And even when you're in Accra, there's still like a natural, like it's a city in Africa, but there's still a vibration that feels like home. And you turn the corner in this city and there's a coconut tree, or you turn the corner in this city and there's a mango tree, right? Or these different vegetables that we learned about. Whereas here, I mean, we live in food deserts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can't even you're not getting vegetables or fruit off the trees, and you can't even go to the stores.
Go and get 'em.
That's what I wanted to say. When I first got to Africa, I saw a lot of what looked like to me undeveloped land, underdeveloped land. And a lot of what we drove through and what we saw looked dirty to me. And I was like, dang, everything is just so dirty, because when you look out, it looks like their homes are right on the ground, and it looks like they're just walking on dirt all the time. Throughout the experience, throughout the time there, I realized that they were just coexisting with nature in a way that was natural, and it wasn't dirty. It was just their way of being. It's a way of being that's what I was explaining earlier. There is other ways of being, and when you're in America, you do feel this sense of unease, like something just ain't all the way right here. Something we doing ain't right. This 5-day work week, only getting 2 days off. Something just ain't sitting right in my spirit. But when you get to Africa, everything that they do is so immersive of everything that they have. And everyone I talked to, every African I talked to said, we have everything here. They said, I heard it so much. Yeah. We have everything here. We have everything here. So what looked to me like undeveloped or, underdeveloped, to them, they have everything because they use everything that they have.
Right.
And us, we just kind of develop, we manufacture as opposed to just living, naturally.
This notion of everything returns to the land. And so we have the coconut water, then we open up the coconuts and we eat the meat. And when we're done, there's a garbage can. I'm like, well, you like for me to put it in the garbage can? He's like, no, that's not garbage. Put it back on the ground.
Yep.
Like, put it back on the ground. And he takes it and tosses it behind him into the jungle. Put it back on the ground. And that's just, again, their ability, like, that's not garbage.
Nope.
And here it is, banana peels are garbage, you know, all these things are garbage to us because how we live, and we believe that we're living the right way, right? Yeah. And it's like, and it serves for why we're so disconnected.
Yes.
So disconnected. So we got 3 minutes. What's the last thing you want the audience to hear before we close the show? We got 3 minutes. The last small thing you want the audience to hear from you before we close today.
Go to Africa. Get there, seriously. Right. Get there by any means necessary. It's very important. It's really is important for you to see that, to expand your capacity, to understand who you are and what you're capable of. You really have to see this land. You really have to walk on this land. It will change you. It will transform you. This has been transformative, and it will continue to be transformative.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Who else?
Go ahead, Freddie.
Ladies first.
I would say walk in your purpose.
Yeah.
When you're walking in your purpose, everything else, don't worry about the how. It's going to just fall into place. So, yes, this trip was transformational. Walk in your purpose and get home.
Yeah.
You need to get home. If you don't do nothing else, get home.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
The Bible says people without a vision, the Bible said people without a vision, you perish. So get wisdom, get understanding about yourself. Yeah. If you're on the fence, get off the fence. Take the jump shot and go to Africa.
Got it. Love it.
And that's what another Bible verse he mentioned, not he mentioned, but it came to mind early on, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. This trip renewed my mind. It renewed my spirit. Listen to that still small voice and listen to Linal on Sundays, because I listened to Linal. It started 3 years ago or so, and I've been following him and I've been listening. And this trip would have, I don't know if it would have occurred, at least not right now, if I had not been looking into my purpose, learning who I am, and being coached by Linal. So, yeah.
Birds of a feather flock together.
All right.
Yeah. There's a quote by Richard Mullen. I put this in my email to those on my list yesterday. And this is the message I have for those of you all who haven't been. I completely understand where Richard Mullen is coming from. And he says, the only I envy is the man who has not yet been to Africa. For he has so much to look forward to.
Yes.
For those of you who haven't been, this is what gives me so much life. Taking people to Ghana and watching them have this experience does so much for me, and I'm so grateful to the Creator for giving me the gift of purpose and helping me see on my first journey to Ghana that this was something that I was supposed to do. And I just continue to hope that he continues to give me the gift of doing this and leading this tour. Thank you all for your trust. And, man,
thank you.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for following your purpose.
Yes.